Welcome to Accounting High.
It's like accountants, we're built like we're like the magic eight ball. Like everybody asks us questions and then we just give them an answer. And again, you kind of qualify it. But whenever you become an advisor, you got to go from being the person answering the questions to the person asking the questions.
Class is in session, it's time for Shoperations at Accounting High. Class is in session, it's time for Shoperations at Accounting High. Kids, hybrid teams for Pete's sake. I'm trying to manage through screens, but I can't figure out which Zoom window's my next meeting. Well, since 2012, my firm's been in the cloud. Join us as we go deep, I'll try not to run it to the ground. We're sharing profit and loss and managing back office. The tax staff just quit, tried to hire on LinkedIn, no luck. And scope creep team count cash, automate tax, compliance transactions, ID and bottlenecks. Come on, ops. Scotty, wait a minute. It's my firm, dog. I know, and I said you could run it however you want.
Introducing the star of our show,
Scotty and Adam Hale.
We're gonna have a problem here.
Hey, Scotty, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, homie. Oh, man, it's been a long time coming. So, just prep our students here for what we have in store. We have the better half of Summit CPAs. If you don't know Summit CPAs, go back and listen to episode 47 of this show. It is titled The Model Cloud Accounting Firm, featuring Adam's partner, Jody. Jody's first time on the show. Let's just say it's one of our top episodes ever of the show. And we're going to get to see behind the hood. This is part 2 now of that. We're going to go deeper on the other half of this model cloud accounting firm. That is Adam Hale. Adam, welcome. Our students welcome you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I was just looking at all the familiar faces on the intro there. So happy to be here and appreciate you having me, man.
Well, it's all standing on the shoulders of giants. We're all following people's footsteps. And as I say, the model cloud accounting firm, these are some of the footsteps that we're following, is yours as well. So I want to go back to the start here for you, is how you ended up becoming a CPA in the first place and how you ended up finding Jody in the first place.
Yeah, I found him in the one ads. No, Jody, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, my start was really, I just wanted to be an FBI agent. I had somebody come my freshman year of high school. I was pretty decent at finance and seemed like a pretty cool dude. He had a gun on him and he was just like, hey, if you want to be an FBI agent, the number one career to have is being an accountant. And I was like, no kidding. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do. But then, whenever I started right before school, I ended up having an injury playing football. And so it kind of took me out of anything kind of physical.
What position did you play?
I was a linebacker. So
linebacker.
Yeah,
all right.
So my hope was to be able to play college ball, and that didn't happen. And so I was like, nope, got to hit the books, got to figure this out. Got about halfway through accounting, realized I really didn't like it that much, but I was already kind of pot committed at that point. So I was just like, well, I'll figure it out. I mean, the cool thing is like, so
were you committed to wanting to still be in the FBI at that point, or did you see this as a career?
No, I saw it as a career. I mean, the cool thing about accounting, I think that's different than all the rest of them, like once you get into that business stratosphere, was like in business, it was like there was marketing, business management. I didn't know what the hell business management meant. That meant I could be like running a McDonald's, or I could, like own a Fortune 500 company. I didn't know what that meant. And so whenever back then you look in this thing called the paper and it had all the classified ads for all the jobs, well, the accounting jobs had tons, and you could do public, you could do corporate, you could do, all kinds of things with an accounting degree. So I was like, I think accounting is going to give me my widest variety of opportunities. So I just kind of buckled in and finished it out. It wasn't actually until I started working with Jody that I really realized I didn't like accounting. So he actually, the first time I met him was I had just bombed an interview. I got to the nine, dressed in my tie. I was all prepared for all the questions and everything. And it was just, I wasn't being myself. And I just choked on the interview. And I was like so mad at myself. And then I remember my dad throwing it down on the table. He said, hey, here's a place you can go apply to. And it was, Jody was running like a small regional firm at that point. He was like kind of the tax guy. So I just put on a sports coat, my jeans, I was like, I'm just going to go in there and just shoot from the hip. I was just kind of messing around, just trying to take the edge off. And, Jody, he's just a kind of roll with the punches kind of guy. And he and I just clicked immediately. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So he offered me a job pretty much on the spot.
So you dressed down a little bit. I mean, it wasn't as buttoned up and you got to be yourself. You let your hair down, so to speak, at this interview. Was he wearing his Hawaiian shirts at the time, or what was Jody wearing?
No, man, he was Jody is not like the big dresser, so he was probably in a wrinkled polo at that time. I used to always make fun of him because, I'd always show up in my dress pants and a nice iron shirt, and he'd always look like he just rolled it out of the back seat or something. But he, no Hawaiian shirts at that time.
Literally, that's what he is doing now. Pretty much.
Yeah, that's probably
He's probably
true.
got a few Hawaiian shirts in his back seat that he can just change out.
He has quite a few. I mean, I think you've heard the story, I'm sure, of his Hawaiian shirts. I always make fun of him now because he used to like kind of stand out. It's like, hey, here's this like guy from Indiana in his mid 40s walking around like he's retired in a Hawaiian shirt. Now he's just like an old white guy in Florida. He moved to Florida with a Hawaiian shirt. I'm like, you kind of are you are kind of the stereotypical.
So he turned into what he was parodying. He was a parody of that at some point, or it was like an aspiration for him, and then he basically lived that dream. That was
shirt,
the dream
yeah.
for him.
That shirt's his vision board, I guess. So, and he made it come true.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
he's down there. He's comfortable. He's living the Florida life as he wanted to back in Indiana. But this was back in the day, and it was all accidental, too, as he told the story, too. It's all kind of happened accidental. And you just happened to fall into that interview because the first one you bombed. What else was it about it? You guys just, like, clicked? Was there any common interest, or was there something else that, like, cut the edge off, too?
I mean, we were talking about golf and all kinds of stuff. He was just a cool dude. He was younger. I mean, for somebody that's like, at that time I was 22, so he would have been 32. He was running that company. I was only there for like 3 months with him.
So 10 years. About 10 years age difference on you.
Yeah, 10 years age difference between the two of us. And so you've probably seen the TV show The Office, right? Sometime over a few adult beverages, I'll tell you all the stories. That show had nothing on the characters that he had in that office. Like, we had somebody that fit every weird profile in the world.
Really?
Oh, I mean, it was a comedy, but also a tragedy. I mean, that place was just like, it was a disaster.
So what, did you see yourself as Jim at the time? Were you already comparing everybody?
Oh yeah, 100%. It was like, I mean, this was
Jody
before,
Michael?
At best, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, fair.
Yeah.
All right.
But I mean, again, the characters and the shenanigans for that first like 3 months, I was like, oh man, what did I get myself into? And Jody was just hard to pin down, man. He was always on the go. And so I knew I had to have my stuff in order before I went to go see him and all that kind of stuff. But we had our little Jerry Maguire moment, probably like 3-4 months in. He's like, hey, I'm leaving. I'm starting my own thing. You want to come with me? There was no goldfish. He's no Tom Cruise. But yeah, he's just like, I'm leaving. You want to come with me? And I was like, yeah, because this place is not fun and not what I want to be doing here soon. And he kind of was like, hey, here's my vision. Like, we were heavy tax. And he's just like, I don't want to do a heavy tax season. He had young kids at the time. He's like, I want to just start something new, figure something out, do things differently. And I was like, well, I don't have a whole lot of experience knowing what different looks like, but I know I don't want this. And I'll say for the first like 5 years, like, make no mistake about it, we grinded. I mean, we worked 80 hours a week, but we felt like we were building something and moving towards something.
But you were building something different too. You were moving away from something else and toward a new future.
Yeah, I mean, we had the freedom. I mean, we were so agile. There was just the two of us for a couple years that we didn't like something, we didn't do it. And so we had that little bit of freedom and flexibility. Don't get me wrong, like there was things that we did because we needed to make a buck to pay the rent or, pay our salaries and stuff. But for the most part, we were able to really experiment. So from my perspective, being 22 years old, trying to figure stuff out, I mean, it was a really unique and very cool opportunity. And somebody like Jody, like just basically opening the business up to me right out of the gate and just saying, hey, like, what do you think? What do you want to do? Involving myself in all those decisions was, like I said, it was just a huge opportunity, man. And we learned a lot just from, quite frankly, just screwing stuff up a lot, right? It was definitely fail forward.
So what was your role in the beginning when he took you on your wing? What was your role?
Grinder. I would do anything. You know what I mean? Didn't matter if it was taxes, bookkeeping, consulting. I did everything. So that was
getting it done.
Yep.
Whatever it was.
I was just trying to crank through the work and then just kind of think through. But again, he involved me in like all the business decisions right out of the gate. Like, how are we going to price this? I had complete autonomy. It was like almost like working for myself in a way, but we had each other to collaborate, work with, and bounce ideas off of.
What was the structure? What was the ownership structure at that time, or how was he paying you, or what did it look like?
Oh yeah, no, I was making a solid, $34,000 a year at that point. It was something like whatever the starting pay was back in 2001. But I wasn't a partner for the first 2 years. He actually got referred in a partner from a large CPA firm. Said, "Hey, you guys would be great together." He merged in with us. Couldn't be more wrong. Like, he was a very traditional accountant, wanted to do traditional things. He kept talking about hours and how many hours he was billing, and it just was not a good fit. So that was pretty short lived. I think it lasted like 6 months to a year. And we actually got our firm administrator from him, and she still works with us today. So that was a positive from that relationship. But what also came out of that is somewhat he said it was an obligation, but at that point he was a multi-member LLC. And so he needed another member. So he gifted me in that 5%. And then ultimately, within like the next year, I purchased the other 35%. What year was that? That was 2004, I think, 2004, 2005. And then I ended up buying the other 35%, which back then was a steal because, frankly, the firm wasn't worth much back then. We were still sub $500,000 in revenue.
Yeah. As we discussed in previous episodes, the journey there was not straight line forward. It wasn't just climb up the mountain. You guys had some ups and downs during the tumultuous next like 10 years building this firm, taking a lot of shots and doing things differently and going out of pocket. How did that feel?
Oh man, I was not a 10Xer at that point. I can still remember Jody's desk and walking in one night, and I said, "Jody, if we just get $30,000 a month in recurring revenue, we're just going to be killing it. We're going to be doing so well." You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't thinking about anything bigger or greater than just carving out a little space for us in Northeast Indiana, right? That's what I was thinking. I was thinking we're going to build something cool that we enjoy, that's different for us, but not really thinking about it at a bigger scale. And Jody just laughed, and he's like, "Well, yeah, I mean, that'd be cool, but hopefully it'll be a lot bigger than that." I was like, "Let's not get greedy, bro. I just want to be living good and be able to do this stuff." So,
for context, what's your monthly revenue now?
Oh, monthly revenue now? We're a little over $1 million monthly revenue. Yeah. So
monthly.
Yeah.
What's the size of the firm? Before like the whole Anders and everything, just let's talk about Summit. What's the size for context?
Oh yeah, we were right around 10 million is where we were.
Around 10 million now. And so in those early days, you were trying to just get to 1 million. You were just trying to get to a happy place where you could coast in. I mean, what did you see this as? You were still young. You were still in your 20s at that point.
Oh, I didn't mind hustling and working and doing, being a little bit of everything. I didn't really understand leverage at that point and delegation and all those kind of things. And I thought to myself, if I can make 6 figures, and, again, you got to kind of put it in context, early 2000s in Northeast Indiana, like if you're making 6 figures, you're doing pretty well, and that was kind of my target. I think the reality for me set in whenever one night I was at a bar with like 3 buddies, 2 of which I graduated college with. One was an engineer, one was a finance major, and we were all sitting around, and the other buddy comes in. He was making like $10 an hour at a bookstore or something. He comes in, he goes, "Hey, how much are taxes on $150,000? And I'm like, "Why do you care?" And he's like, "Well, at my new job selling cars," and he'd only been there for like 3 months, 3 or 4 months. And I'm like, this guy, he's a car salesman. So I was like, "Oh, you're full of it." He pulls out his pay stub, and we're all sitting around the table, and we're like, "Wait a minute. This guy's making more money than all 3 of us, finance, engineer, accounting degree people." And I was like, I either need to A, go sell cars, which I seriously considered, or I just need to figure out how to be bigger and better at what we're doing. And so I went back to Jody and I'm like, yeah, what do we need to do, to do this kind of stuff? And like I said, Jody, I think had
You
kind
saw a
of
local car salesman raking it in. You saw, and so that changed your perspective a little bit.
yeah, I was just like, why am I working 78 hours a week? Went to school trying to figure all this stuff out, helping people that are making really good money make more money. Again, just kind of put it into the context a little bit. And like I said, I think Jody always had like a bigger view of the world. And in fairness, at that point, I was probably 25, 26 years old.
He just had 10 years of perspective. It's almost like this was a mentor-mentee on both sides, too.
He's my yin to my yang, or vice versa. We've always had kind of a brother relationship where we've been able to just keep it real and say what we need to say without anybody getting too hard of feelings. Where he's strong, I'm weak, and vice versa. And I think over the years, we've made each other better on both sides. It's a big reason why we got to where we are today. That wasn't always the case, though. I mean, there was a time where between the two of us, we started to grow and we started to materialize some of these things. And as you would expect, as you get bigger and you have more people and there's bigger visions going on, we found ourselves a lot of times doing the same things. He was doing what I was doing what he was doing, pretty much from the top to the bottom. And we might have had different perspectives on how to do things. And it was starting to create a little bit of tension between.
Give me an example. What were some of the things that were like overlapping, or the things that you were doing?
Well, I mean, just in bigger, broader strokes. I mean, think about it even just from like operations and sales. How are we going to get sales? What's the forecast going to look like? What do we need to do? Pricing. It didn't really matter what it was. Whenever it was just the two of us and we were just nimble, it's like, hey, guess what I did today? Oh, cool. Guess what I did today? But whenever you start getting 10, 12 people and it has to become a system, now all of a sudden, instead of it just being, this is what I did today, this is what I'm going to have the team do from now on. And this is what I'm going to have the team do from now on. And it's like, it kind of started to become more of a thing. And so one of the best moves that we made is like a partnership is we brought in outside help. So it was a firm called Navigate the Journey. They're still in existence.
At what stage did you guys seek that outside help? What were you facing at the time that you needed to go outside?
Yeah, it was probably we were probably close to about $1 million in revenue. Like I said, we had 10 employees. We knew we wanted to grow and we were having these like friction points. We were able to sit down with somebody and have a third party person just go, hey, look, you can do all these things. And sure, you can do all these things. But what if somebody owns this side of the house and the other person owns the other side of the house? Doesn't mean that you don't give opinions and you don't talk about it as a group and do all those kind of things. But at the end of the day, if you really truly trust each other, trust that other person to make the final call in that area. And so that's what we kind of did. Like Jody took on BD and he took on the marketing and all those kind of things. And he was still handling some of the higher end firm administration work as well, in terms of like insurance and stuff like that. And then I took on the people and operations side. And so by dividing, so I was coming up with process. I was the one responsible for doing all those kind of things, training, delivery, those kind of things. He was focusing more on firm administration, BD, and sales. Again, it's not like we didn't talk and I wasn't saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do, or vice versa. But it felt like we now had the permission to go back to whenever it was just like, guess what I did today? And that really was a pivotal point for us in our relationship. That's whenever we started to kind of hockey stick. Like once we got that kind of figured out, there was a lot of other things that happened in terms of sales and opportunity there as well. But I felt like that was a little bit of a limiter for us. And as soon as that kind of got figured out, we were off to the races and haven't looked back since.
Did you have any rough patches in your relationship? Did egos ever get in the way or things like that? Or has it always been pretty smooth from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, we're two type A's, so you know what I mean? Like, I think that egos sometimes get in the way with anybody. It's just, how fast you can get over it and make up and those kind of things. And so there would be little things that I'd probably irritate each other, but nothing that was ever like felt like it was a big deal or something that we couldn't just get over, a small irritant or something like that. Even whenever we were like bumping heads or feeling like, whose decision is this? It was never really adversarial at all. It just wasn't productive. Right. By making it productive, it just smoothed everything out for us. And
it sounds like everything outside of work is like a friendship. Are you guys close outside of the office?
Oh yeah, I mean we don't hang out as much as we should or could. We had different family stuff going on. Like he had a young family whenever I was going to the bars
Yep.
all the time, and then by the time his kids got a little bit older, my kids were young, so we had that. But no, we have a great time every time we hang out. And early on, whenever we used to go to all of our events and do all of our stuff, it was like we weren't buying 2 hotel rooms. We were always splitting rooms and. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were like the Step Brothers movie. You know what I mean? We were always just bed over bed and go to the bars, have a good time. We both have pretty common interests in different things that we do. And if you ever hang out with Jody or I, we'll get a few drinks and we'll go to the casino, and you won't see us until 6 o'clock in the morning. We'll sit at a table
Fair.
together and just have a good time.
Yeah. Well, I did get to hang out with you guys fairly recently over in Chicago at a conference, and there was some more friends of ours at that conference as well, Kenji and Matthew of Acuity, and they used the Step Brothers image for their presentation on partnerships. And then I saw a picture of you and Jody dressed up as Step Brothers that you guys put on for something that you guys did.
Yeah. And
How about that?
we were giving them a hard time, just telling them they were, still just a couple years behind us. And
Just a couple of years behind you on everything, almost.
Yeah.
And I like to draw that comparison because I draw a lot of comparisons to how you guys run your firms, but also how your partnership kind of developed and enveloped and evolved over time too. There's so many similarities. You guys are on different parts of the country, growing different firms, but on similar paths in this whole cloud world. So it's fascinating, but it also doesn't really surprise me because you guys are pulling on a lot of the same threads and learning a lot of the same things and looking outside of accounting to build your practices and to grow the firm. That was a common thread through a lot of the conversations I've had with them and with Jody and with you, is you weren't looking to other firms to do what you were doing. You were looking outside of that, and then you brought it in to your firm.
Yeah, it's just because there wasn't a whole lot out there. I mean, early on, whenever you go to like traditional CPA firm conferences, everybody held everything really close to the vest. They were just like, the constant joke is anytime you ask an accountant why they did something, they'll say, well, that's what they did last year, kind of a thing. That's the way all the conferences felt like. I mean, we would go there and we'd feel like outcasts. And then, we also got tired of going to all the conferences and talking about firm of the future. You're going to have to do advisory. And we're going, you're not all doing advisory? Like what's going on?
Right.
It was good. Like I said, those guys definitely had an opportunity to hang out with them at the conference and really get to know them, and very similar paths. And I think once we started seeing more and more people do kind of what we're doing, and there's that community of people like yourself, it's like we all kind of have that common experience, and we are kind of all looking to see like, what is everybody else doing? So I think the power in that is that everybody's just I'm super collaborative. Nobody's like doing anything in secrecy. Everybody's willing to share like the tech, the process, how they pay people. I mean, just stuff that you would never hear other CPA firms or competitors like talk about. In our space, I just feel like everybody's kind of an open book, and we try to be as much as we can as well. That's why we go out and kind of evangelize for why this is so important, why we think it's the future of the industry, and the way we think it should look.
Let's dive into a little bit of the advisory now. So you guys have created a course for virtual CFO to offer that. It's basically the playbook that anybody I can use to start that arm of their practice. I just interviewed Mike Meilinger, and he's been through your course, and it's the fastest growing part of his firm, most profitable arm of his firm. We just talked about that on his episode. What's interesting is you guys have always led with that, and you grew your firm with that, and now you are changing Anders from within. So for more context, your firm was recently, it was acquired, right, by Anders.
Yeah, we merged in, yeah. I mean, we're equity partners, but yeah, they basically acquired us, yeah.
But you're coming in from the inside, changing the makeup of what advisory looks like within there, and you're building out the virtual CFO practice within Anders to make them more like the vision you guys had for what a firm could look like. You guys were leading with the CFO services, and you grew entirely differently than Acuity, who I just compared you to, because they started with that, but then dropped it and let it sit in the background, and they don't lead with CFO services anymore. They're more your traditional books accountant and they're lower in the market. You
Yeah.
guys are still true to from the beginning. You led with that and you grew with that and you proved that it's possible that that could work. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, that was an evolution in itself. So, I mean, I appreciate what you just said, and it makes me wish that were completely true. The reality is, like, there was some imposter syndrome there. What we were doing early on is we were doing real-time accounting, bookkeeping, whatever you want to call it, financial close, and we were having these really great meetings with our clients. But if I were to sell you on the service, basically I would tell you why I'm better, stronger, faster than you having an internal accounting team, right? And then on top of it, I'm going to bring these insights. So I was like, we would sell leading those things first. And knowing that the cherry on top, the reason why I'm going to push you over the edge because you're not going to have to pay any more for it. And you're going to get great advice, something your team can't give you internally. But we never led with that. And I think that it was just, again, it was just like, how are we going to prove that this is like a tangible thing, you know? Because you got to be careful. Like, we did eventually around the same time figure out how to productize advisory so we could make people more than just like the partners of the firm or Jody and I be able to deliver this service. But it was, you don't want to be too transactional with it either. You know, there still has to be a little bit of personality with it and those kind of things. And so I just remember I was sitting in San Francisco. I was at a conference. We were talking to a bunch of agencies that we were working with. And I was just going off on random business advice and all these metrics and all this stuff. And the guy across the table from me, he became a client, but I didn't really want him to become a client because I knew he knew his stuff inside and out. And he was just drilling me all night. And I remember him going, okay, Adam, tell me why I should work with you. And I'm just thinking to myself, you don't want to work with me. And I went through my spiel. You know, I told him about all the accounting stuff, how we dial everything in, blah, 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 blah. And then I laid the cherry on top, like, hey, here comes the mic drop. And he just looked at me and he goes, that's cool. He goes, just out of curiosity, he's like, man, you talked to me for like 10 minutes about all this accounting stuff that I don't care about. He goes, I'd pay 50 grand a year just to have this conversation. And I was like, huh. And at least for me personally, that's whenever I had like the confidence goes, you know what, you're right. Like, this conversation and these types of conversation are worth that much money. And from that point forward, Jody will always tell you he tried to lead and put in more on the advisory stuff. But from that point forward, I feel like we were united and that we were going to say, the reason why you want to work with us is because of the advisory. If you need us to do the accounting and books, sure, we can do that for you. If you want us to do tax, we can do that for you too. But this is the reason why you're here. I'm not saying I can do somebody's bookkeeping or their accounting better than the other firm. I'm not saying that I can do your tax return better than somebody else. But if you want really solid advisory work, this is our bread and butter. And that's whenever we could really start leading with advisory.
Did you believe that before the client told you that, or did it take him saying it to validate it for you?
I had to hear it out loud. I mean, I knew that it was the great part. Like I said, I felt like that's what pushed him over the edge and made it a no-brainer, you know, to pay us $50,000 or $60,000 a year. I'm like coming in at the same cost. I'm coming in at 2/3 of the cost of an internal employee. And then on top of it, I'm going to give you this great advice. I thought that was what you kind of came in and just slammed the door with and just made the deal automatic. Instead of,
you didn't realize that's what was selling it in the first place.
Yeah. And so I was just like, I don't need to justify my fees by saying I'm going to be 2/3 of the cost of one of your employees. Forget that. I'm not even going to make that comparison anymore. You're going to pay me X to have these kind of conversations because they are so valuable. You know, you had to really understand your brand promise and your value proposition, those kind of things. So we had to get really slick with making sure you could convey that in just, you know, an elevator pitch. But as soon as we kind of got that down, that it was easy. And we made sure, like on our pricing tool, because we have this really cool, like really the differentiator for us too was like a 1-hour sales call and close. We could bring somebody in and show them their pricing calculator really quick, just ask them, show it to them right on the screen, show them 4 or 5 options. Do you want this? Yes or no, yes or no. And they would see their fixed fee just kind of move back and forth because everything was value-based. And we moved advisory up to the very top of that and just said, hey, this is the most important part. Then we can talk about these other 2 things.
Those other things are afterthoughts, just like that client said to you, and just like they should be. They're the compliance things that have to get done that you can do, that you're more than capable of doing. But it's not what's selling those relationships. It's not what, nobody associates that with anything more than just the cheapest amount that they can pay. Like for something like that, who can get it done for the cheapest is usually what they go for, those compliance things, if that's what they're looking for.
Right. And we knew we couldn't compete at that level, nor did we want to. Like I said, the advisory piece is just, and it's different. I mean, again, you got to be careful. You don't want to be too transactional with it. Being an advisor is difficult, and training advisors. I remember when Jody and I were doing it, it was easy. We never lost a client. Everybody loved us. It was super cool. And then all of a sudden we're like, hey, we need to grow this. And there's, we don't necessarily need to be the people doing this. Let's just bring in people that are better and smarter than us, which is super easy to do. Like whenever you look at people's resumes, we're like, oh, who do we pick? There's so many of these people that are so much more qualified than we are at this. And so we started bringing people in and putting them in that position. And then they started failing.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
And well, we were just like, what the heck? This person's clearly intelligent. They have a much better resume than I do. Where's the disconnect? And the disconnect is like accountants. We're like the magic 8 ball. Like everybody asks us questions and then we just give them an answer. And again, you kind of qualify it. But whenever you become an advisor, you got to go from being the person answering the questions to the person asking the questions. So now I got to
become the 8 ball.
Yeah. So yeah, you're like kind of like, it's a total shift in how you're used to operating. So I would put a really smart person in the room and they'd be like, ask me anything. And small business clients will tell you the same thing every single time. I don't know what I don't know. You tell me. And then they'd be like, oh, I don't know. So then you'd be like, so you had to kind of train them on being curious, call it entrepreneurial, but you got to be curious and you got to be willing to kind of put yourself in the shoes of that small business owner. Anytime I ever worked with a client, I thought, oh, that's my plumbing business. That doesn't make any sense. Why would I do this? Why would I do that? So I would ask just a lot of dumb questions, but it would lead and help guide the client to go, yeah, I guess I don't know. I don't know why I don't do that. I don't know why I think about that. And whenever I feel like, and here's like the silver bullet, I tell all my CFOs, anytime you feel like you're stepping out of bounds with a client, because I ask a lot of operational questions. So I might have an ops person in the call. I might have like a salesperson on the call. In finance, sales and operations in most organizations, they're all decoupled. And finance is kind of the tail that wags the dog. We believe finance should be leading everything, right? And then bringing those 3 areas together. So anytime I'm ever stepping into somebody else's sandbox and I'm about ready to kind of mess stuff up, I usually just say, well, financially speaking, Scotty, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do this and this? And then they leave you, they're like immediately the defense mechanism's low because you're not like questioning their ability to be an operator or a salesperson. You're just saying, hey, like help the stupid finance guy out. Like, this doesn't math. We've got a math problem here. And then they're like, oh, okay. And then it becomes a really cool collaborative conversation. So I always just tell people, if you feel like you're going to step over and maybe get into something that might be a little bit of a hornet's nest, just start out by saying, financially speaking, this looks weird to me. That sounds strange to me, and it just kind of gives you the way in.
But it's also going back to asking questions too. That is hard for a lot of accountants because we are used to just providing an answer. So was it the people that were really well qualified that weren't working out, let's say, were those accountants that you were trying to put in those positions, or were you hiring CFOs?
It's a mixed bag. I mean, we were getting people from corporate, public. They were CFOs or controllers. They were people that kind of grew through an organization. We even had a partner at a CPA firm. So it didn't really, I wouldn't say that we had good or bad luck with any particular profile. It's kind of how the person operates. And you can teach strategy, and as long as somebody's like willing to kind of accept that and use the tools in our system, they can still be super successful. But just being naturally curious helps. And Jody and I are both naturally curious, and we're not afraid to say, well, if it was me, I would do this.
And maybe sometimes the employee may have some more reservations about what they should or shouldn't say or can or can't say. So maybe it just took a little bit of coaching too for the employee to feel comfortable enough to bring certain things up. Maybe they were a little too reserved in those conversations. That's interesting too.
Well, yeah, because you feel like an idiot, right? Like you should already know the answer to that. I'm supposed to be the smartest
The
person in the room.
accountant, well, that's how the accountant's supposed to feel. That's usually how they walk into the situation is, well, we have all the answers financially, and we're here to provide those answers. That's not the case when you're advising.
Right.
And it takes a different helmet. You got to put on a different hat to get used to that. So what kind of systems did you put in place for your team? And is that the same thing as the playbook that you guys share now?
So, well, the playbook's a little bit different because it kind of takes you from beginning to end. And it really does start with the sales process. So, putting together the packages, putting together the pricing, onboarding, and delivery. So you need to make sure all of that stuff is pretty cohesive. And that's really what the playbook is. And that's a component of it for sure. But inside of the delivery it was about creating these like stated meetings, like actually putting a name on the meeting type so people knew who was supposed to attend, and a really light agenda. It doesn't mean that we're going to talk about all the things. It was just like 3 generic things for like a pipeline meeting or a financial performance meeting. But by doing that, by creating a system, because see, the other thing is too, is like for an advisor, everything always felt like it was supposed to be like, what silver bullet am I bringing today? Like, Scotty, we just talked last week. Most people couldn't figure out how to talk to clients once a month. We were asking our team to talk to them once a week. And they're just like, I just bestowed all my wisdom last week. Now what am I going to talk about? You know what I mean? Like, and so with us, it was like, if you create these systematic meeting types, well, we have a conversation about that topic every single week, a different one during the different times of the month. And so we were able to create this like flywheel of conversations. And, people also freak out about like scope creep and all these other kind of things. By identifying what those meetings are and those meeting types are, people were able to see pretty quickly, like, that's actually like what we're going to talk about. I don't need to call you every time a thought pops into my head because I know the second Tuesday we're going to talk about forecasting. And that's my opportunity to update you on ABC, that kind of a thing.
Did you guys were creating this framework in order to meet with clients so you could do it on a more frequent basis? Because you could have just went, there isn't that much to talk about. We'll just keep these meetings to every month, right? But you guys went all in on getting people to look at things weekly and keep things updated weekly because you guys were always like daily updaters, keeping all of it up to date as you can. So people are looking at their financials real time. And then you created this cadence. What was it like developing that? Was it just you turning what you and Jody were doing into a process? How did that look?
That's exactly what it was, is us just kind of sitting down and going, what's the best of what we're doing and how we're doing it? And it was a little bit of trial and error, obviously. But once we kind of came up with that system and then testing it on all the different people, kind of seeing where the weak spots were, because you also have to take into account like what the client needs, how big the client is. So for us, we have kind of small, medium, and large clients. Well, small would be a monthly client. Medium would be we meet twice a month. And then a large would be we're meeting weekly. So again, it's not like a one size fits all. We're going to always meet with a client for, once a week, but we would kind of fit them into those. Those were our packages, right? So again, we have different names for them, but just kind of think about it in terms of effort is small, medium, and large from a consulting standpoint.
At what point did you guys determine your niche? And was it before or after you started leading with all of these CFO services?
It was after we delivered the CFO services. So that was after the fact, but it was accidental. We had a client hit us up on the website and they were actually a web dev company. And we thought they were just like trying to do a sales call. And they're like, no, we're from Rhode Island. We're fully distributed. We would like to work with you. And we're like, seriously? And we did virtual CFO services, but that was really truly our first client outside of our geographic footprint. So we got involved with them, and from them, they have like an association, and they are a very collaborative industry.
How did they find you?
Just on our website. Because see, early on, every single CPA firm had yellow page, like who could spend the most money in the yellow pages? Well, we didn't. I just told you, we didn't have any money, so we went straight to the web. And so we were blogging and doing all these things on the website. There was no presence on the web in the early 2000s.
I remember those days.
From accounting firms. So it was like, for us, it was cheap, it was easy. And this firm out of Rhode Island that was fully distributed, had like 50, 60 team members spread all throughout the country. they found us and were like, we need somebody that's like anywhere and everywhere, and you guys are virtual, and we're like looking around our office going, yep, we're virtual. And so again, they're a collaborative group. They brought us into one of their industry events, and we were able to kind of explain to them, because the KPIs are very similar to a CPA firm. We were able to kind of talk through all the different KPIs and all those kind of things. And from there, we just got a ton of clients coming to us that were in that same industry. And so it was a little bit of happenstance. It's not like we sat out and we were like, hey, we're going to work in this industry and that's going to be our focus. It wasn't until we got like 10, 15 clients that we were like, hey, this needs to be a thing.
It was accidentally on purpose, though, because you guys were creatively looking at things, and you probably already did your whole cartoons on the website before you started working with all these creative people, because you guys are just creative in a sense already. So it was, you backed into it, or you did it on purpose, or you didn't do it on purpose, and it just sort of happened, but it was still where your heads were at anyway. And then you started learning, as Jody had said on previous episodes, you guys started learning from your clients too about better ways to manage your firm.
100%. The distributed model altogether, that came from that client. Like, we didn't know how to work distributed. We were they were one of very few distributed companies in the country at that point. The internet, I mean, hell, a couple of years before that was still dial-up at that point. And so they taught us how to be distributed, work with distributed team members, work with distributed clients, the technology around it, and more importantly, probably the culture. So we became less like a CPA firm, and we started operating more like a digital agency at that point.
Eventually, the world caught up. How did that feel? Because you guys first had a different value prop for CPAs to come work for you. It was flexible. It was work from home. Not many firms are offering that at all. You guys are doing stuff cutting edge, future forward. Incomes 2020, let's just say, or maybe it was even a little before that too, and other firms started offering that. How did that feel? Was there a shift?
It was validating, but it also sucked for all those reasons that you just said. It was like, sometimes it's validating and proof of concept whenever you start seeing like people doing what you're doing. And it was always funny. Jody and I would always joke, just like we did whenever we would see people do like accounting stuff or they would do advisory stuff. They'd be speaking like, hey, I just invented this thing. And we're like, cool, yeah, we've been doing that for 10 years. Whenever you heard everybody kind of doing that stuff during COVID, one, it was easy for us because obviously our team was already distributed. It wasn't a big shift for us. The big shift, obviously, during COVID was we weren't used to like little kids running around the house all day. Usually they were off somewhere else. So it was still a little bit of a change for us. But from a recruiting standpoint, it definitely made things more difficult because now everybody was allowing people to work remotely. But we did see a difference whenever people started to pull back and want people back into the office. Then all of a sudden we saw another surge of people going, no, we want somebody that like legit embraces this and isn't like just thinking about it as a must have because of the way the world's working right now. So,
yeah. Well, and it's also easier for people to hop jobs now if they're just working from home. They've got their setup. It's not like it was in the past, you had your office and you had to go pack up your office. And that was an inhibitor of changing jobs because you didn't even want to deal with that. So you just kept going into work. Well, in this case, you can just send somebody an email saying, I quit. I just started my new job. And that's what people are doing now. So that's a little hard to keep up with. But I would imagine you had developed things. And just like you said, you had systems and you developed how this works before everybody else figured it out anyway. And then as they were going back to the office, you were still standing. You guys didn't shift or change the way you were doing anything. You didn't do anything differently. So I would imagine maybe if some people left, they could have come back too.
Oh, we definitely have had a couple boomerang employees who thought, oh, everybody else does things exactly like the way you guys do things. And then they'd come back and be like, nope, and it's just, again, it's like whenever you're a fully distributed company, you have to just be really intentional with your culture. And so you can't just like, most cultures just kind of develop naturally and they take on their own course. But whenever you're distributed, you got to be really thoughtful about how you're interacting with one another when you're getting together, whether it's technology, whether it's stipends. And so it really is kind of a whole package kind of a deal. And whenever we would have team members leave and go somewhere else that offered a remote position, they definitely saw like a deficit, that it was just kind of like oh, you just work from home. They weren't really good about like pulling them in, making them feel like they're part of a team. Because I had somebody that exact same thing. She left and she's like, hey, part of the rationale was like, we moved into a bigger firm, and she's just like, yeah, we don't feel as agile. I'm going to go work for this other firm. And she's like, man, I just felt like I was on an island. They were distributed, but they didn't know how to like create a community and a team. Right. And so she came back and she's working with us now.
And that was a really important note that you made, is culture is defined whether you are intentional about it or not. You have a culture. Every firm has a culture, whether you know it or not. If you're not intentional about it, the culture you have is a byproduct of what you're doing. But if you can be intentional about it, and that's when you can take control of your culture, which you guys have done a great job of.
Yeah, we like to think so. Most of the time, whenever people are with us, they're like, hey, this is just what we've been able to build from that standpoint. And that's probably what I'm most proud of, is just what we do for our team and helping them develop and grow and help them develop skills that I think are super important, no matter. And I tell people all the time, and believe you me, they can all make more money working for somebody else. Like once they see what they do for us and how they do it, I mean, they're really setting themselves up for long-term success. I mean, hopefully that's with us and forever, but that's not always the reality. And I still stay in contact with a lot of team members that have moved on from our organization, and they're all super successful. And it mentioned that like the skills that they learned having to do what we do every day in this industry just has paid huge dividends for them.
Yeah. You guys productized it enough to where somebody else saw your product and they wanted in, and that's Anders. So let's get some context. What's the size of Anders as a firm before they acquired you guys as just a local regional firm?
Yeah, but they were still top 100. I think they were like number 80 in the US. I mean, obviously there's a huge difference between the big four and the top 30
sure.
and the rest of the top 100. I think they were around number 80, and they might have been like 65 million in revenue, something like that. They were a good sized firm, but they were still really local to St. Louis and broader Missouri.
And that was sort of my next question, is how were they operating? Was it just a large footprint in that local area?
Yeah. I mean, they're best in class. Like if you're in the St. Louis or Missouri area, Anders, and you're just like, hey, that's the best of the best. Like they built a really strong brand for themselves. But you move outside of that, they don't, nobody really knew who Anders was.
Sure. And you guys were in Indiana. I mean, where was there a crossover of that footprint? How did they find you, or how did they seek you guys out?
I think they might have saw us at an event or something, or came across I think they were intentionally seeking out a VCFO firm is what it was.
Okay.
I think they just came across some of our content.
And around that time, as you guys were, around 10 million, you guys are probably being approached by private equity and a lot of other people wanting a piece of this action. You're growing fast. You're a large firm doing things differently. How did that feel around that time? Were you guys just saying no to almost every offer? What was it like?
Yeah, we weren't really entertaining anybody at that point. We were just kind of like, we were happy with what we were building. We're kind of those people where we always were setting goals for ourselves, so we never actually hit any goals because we were always just moving the goalposts. Yeah, so we were just in that kind of rat race. And then I think we got to a point where we felt like we could disappear for a month and nobody would really care. You know what I mean? We kind of got bored and we're like, hey, what's next? And so we were like, because we were always innovating and creating new things. And it's like, so what are we going to just do more of this, that kind of a thing. So we're like, let's think about it. Let's entertain a few of these. Let's just see. And I remember one conversation in particular that kind of set it off. We met with a PE firm just because we were interested what that could do for us. We weren't really sure like what that meant for a small accounting firm. And we showed them these really cool projections, how we were going to go from like 10 million to 20 million in 3 years. And the guy was just totally unimpressed. He was like, so did you guys ever think of like 50 million, 100 million? And I was like, I remember we were like, okay, cool. We get off the call. And I remember jumping on Slack with Jody or whatever right afterwards and being like, did you hear that guy? Like, we're taking a service-based business from 10 to 20 million in 3 years. And this guy's just like 50 million. And he's like, yeah, that's pretty crappy. And then we're like, huh, why not 50 million? Why not 100 million? Maybe he's right. Maybe we should be thinking about 50 or 100 million. We know we can get to 20 million. But can we get to 50 million? Can we get to 100 million? Maybe we should be thinking about somebody else that could help us get there. And that's really where we kind of opened our mind to the opportunity of working with another firm or something of that nature.
So it was a private equity conversation that spurred you guys coming and going backwards and not going private equity, but staying within a profession that needs changing. And that's is why I always like the metaphor, you coming from within and help changing it from within. So you sought outside help to change and to run a different practice, but then came back, doubled back, and went to a regional local firm. And it's like they did acquire you and they did work out in y'all's favor. I know we kind of talked about that with Jody. You guys came out strong out of this deal, but you're still engaged and deep in it. And so how does it feel post-acquisition now?
Yeah, I mean, just keeping it real, I would say, so we're 2.5 years post-acquisition. The transition was a lot harder than I thought it would be, to be honest with you. I thought probably a little bit of arrogance, but I thought like this is easy, just snap us in place and we're a rocket ship, just hang on to our coattails. We're going to help you take off. That was kind of,
and they're not going to drag you down. You didn't feel like this was a $65 million thing that's dragging you down?
Yeah, no, I was fully intentional on saying, hey, this was going to be, we're just going to grab it and go. But they had a small operation within theirs that was similar to ours. And so us, even though we had similar tools and similar clients and things like that, our approach to how we looked at work was completely different. So we spent an awful lot of time, more than I would like to admit, trying to figure out how to blend those two cultures and way of doing things together. So it would have probably been easier if they didn't have that division, then we would have been able to kind of run and go. So I would approach an acquisition differently than what we did going into it. But again, no regrets. And the people at Anders are amazing. Like the partners to the people, all that stuff. Like we definitely picked a solid partner, in terms of personalities and team.
And overall, like it, and I've heard loose versions of the story, but it worked out to where you kind of overtook that existing situation. And now you're kind of doing what you probably should have done to begin with. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I feel like the last 6 months or so, we've really come into our own. So it was just, like I said, that first year or two where it just felt like we were just kind of moving in place for a little bit. But now I feel like we've kind of caught our breath and I'm ready to attach to the front end of that rocket ship and, take it to space. So that's the hope.
So there's no rock or boulder holding back the rocket from taking off, right?
I don't feel like it anymore, man. I feel like we're ready to send it into overdrive.
Oh, that's dope. That's dope. Well, give our students one last piece of advice to take away from somebody who's been building the model rockets or model cloud accounting firm for decades now. Can you believe that too? It's been over 20 years.
Yeah, man, 20 plus years. I'm getting old for sure. It shows. I don't look a day over 60.
No, dude, you still look really young. You still act really young. You still have that mindset of, this is still, do you still feel like it's kind of getting started? You just said you're taking a rocket off into space. That's just getting started.
That's exactly how I feel now. I'm energized and I'm ready to go. In terms of advice, I think the biggest thing is like, especially whenever people go through the course, I feel like we're just natural perfectionists. And I feel like everybody wants to have everything built before they do. And we never did that. I mean, we literally built everything in flight all the time. And it was okay if you fail a little bit, we would fail forward. So my thing is like, whenever I give people advice, it's just like, dig in. If you screw it up, I'm going to tell you right now, like from an advisory standpoint, you are going to be way more valuable to those first few clients or some of those clients than anything they've ever gotten before, even if don't have your system fully developed. And that whole imposter syndrome, it's for sure real. But things that seem like common sense to you are just not even remotely common sense to other people. And sometimes just that outside insight, just asking a stupid question that you think is stupid is life changing. And I could give you a million examples of where we've done that with clients, just asking simple questions. So I would just say, don't feel like an imposter, just do it and figure it out. And don't be afraid to kind of practice as you're building, because that's the only way to really learn.
Fail forward. Oh, that's dope. That's great advice. I think anybody could take that at any stage too. That's awesome. Well, thanks, homie. Thanks for joining us
Yeah, man.
at Accounting High. Class dismissed.